we are reaching out to you with a special discussion with an inspiring personality with her fair share of charm and wit. But before we dive in, we would like to thank our venue partner, Residence by Uga Escapes, and also our beauty partner, Headmasters, and our camera equipment provider, Camera Hub. Someone very special, as I mentioned earlier, with us today, and she is a power woman driving global change, positive global change around the world with her stellar experience. To kind of introduce her, it's really not easy as she has done a lot of things with her versatility. But let me introduce you to Samantha de Silva, and she is a leading personality at the World Bank, working as the Senior Technical Specialist. Thank you so much for having this chat with us, and you're definitely chilling by the beach when we made the phone call.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm here on holiday.
So how is Sri Lanka treating you so far?
I love coming home. I come home every chance I get, but I live in Washington, but I come to Sri Lanka and to my second home, which is Malawi in Africa, as much as I can on holiday. I love the food, I love the beaches, and I just love being here.
Lovely. And we're just really keen on diving into the journey that you have experienced. But your passion to do social development, where did it all begin?
So I think that when I originally started, like most young women, I honestly had no real perhaps this was something to do with my generation, because I think young people now are much more focused on how they manage their careers and how what goals they have, etc. We didn't have that as much. I started working in microfinance because I wanted to do something that would empower women. And so I first started working in an organization called Finca, which is a microfinance agency that was working exclusively with women, giving very small loans to women based sort of on the Grameen model. And I, with Finca, went to Malawi in Southern Africa and set up their first microfinance program in Africa. And this was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, I remember, because I'd never been to Africa when I first moved there to live. And we used to go and talk to women working in markets, get them to set up these groups of people that they knew, or women that they knew and could vouch for, and give them very small loans to expand their businesses, etc., with very little technical information about what they did. There were no business plans, nothing, but the women knew each other and they knew who they could trust in terms of taking on these joint loans. And this is such a small amount, and then yet after 4 months you would give them their second loan, but you would match whatever savings they had. And so they expanded their credit, plus it also incentivized them to save. And then you actually saw them, not only their businesses grow, but that they, started going for health checkups. Their daughters started attending school regularly because they could buy their uniforms, etc. So there was a huge impact on an entire village by just having 1 or 2 of these savings and loan groups. And so I did that for 3 years in Malawi, which is actually one of the most beautiful countries if you haven't been. The people are amazing, and I enjoyed my time there very much. Still go back regularly, and then moved on to the World Bank from there.
Wow. And as I can see that you have this passion for uplifting women, and they are a pillar in the society, in the family institution, and other social structures. Even in a Sri Lankan context, how important do you think it is to support women, because they have a domino effect on other individuals, like their children, and then they have an effect on the productivity of the society? So
Absolutely.
how important is it for us to support our women, and how can they seek their inner potential and find opportunity?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously it's incredibly important to support women, and I think they're half the economy. If you want your economy to grow, get your women to work. I think Japan is realizing this in a big way now, and they're incentivizing women to work. And I think that what women need perhaps are different support systems to men, because the old model of men working always assumed that the wife will take care of the home. But if you want women to work, then in many ways you need creches, you need better childcare, you need maternity leave, you need better health care. And these are some of the things I think that we don't think about when we talk about getting women into work. So it's not just about advertising a job saying, we would give preference to women applicants. It's to set up the systems that actually encourage women to work. And in the same way, within the workplace, and I think there are even lessons for the World Bank in terms of this, is to really look at what empowers women within the workforce, within the agency that you're working, because it may not necessarily be the same things that incentivizes a man. You may not require the same qualifications from a woman, but she may bring something very different to the table. So how you set up your teams, how you promote your career progression, etc., would be different, and I think that needs to be taken into account much more than we do currently, especially in larger agencies.
And I think it's incredible that environment is also a very important factor. And if we kind of dive back, I mean, we can see that as much as employment is important for women to kind of harness their potential, also education.
Absolutely.
And before we talk about your thoughts on that, let's kind of go back in memory lane and just tell us about your school time. Where did you, school, and how did that all turn out to be?
So I'm very happy to talk about my school time, which I think for me was a very, very defining sort of period in my life. In Sri Lanka, I went to ladies' college, and I really think I owe so much to my first sort of schooling experience, because ladies' college gave me the foundation in terms of education, but also, and perhaps because it was an all-girls school, in terms of self-confidence, in terms of who you were as a human being. Of course, my friends, who I still see all the time here when I come back, and the networks, all of that, yes, but I think it really focused not just on education. And I mean, I would love to mention some of my teachers. Was Mrs. Nagendra, who had such an impact on my life, Mrs. Gunawardana, Mrs. Siransi Gunawardana, who was phenomenal. And these are people, 50 years later, you still remember what they said to you. And I think this is the kind of impact that teachers have on children, especially on girls. And I don't know whether we realized that at the time, how much impact a teacher has on a child.
Truly. And also, out of curiosity, what kind of person were you in school? Because when you take a classroom, there's always the ones who sit in the front, and the gangsters in the back, and then the tech girls, the science girls, and the ones who like to do dancing, and the ones who come late. So what kind of a girl were you?
I don't think I want to go on public news media and say this, but I think I was quite naughty. In fact, a friend of mine always says that she used to be punished and standing on a table simply because she sat next to me. So because we were constantly being asked to stand on tables because we were doing something naughty. So I think I was quite naughty, but I did study, and I actually what I realized is, and as I got older and I studied some more, that when we studied at Ladies, we studied not so much with an exam focus. We studied very much for the knowledge, that we really enjoyed the knowledge of what we were learning. And I think that was a fundamental difference that Ladies College gave us, that it was not just an exam focused study. You know, we would have class trips looking at trees and leaves, and you know, there was just a sort of diverse way of teaching us various things. And then also I think Ladies College at that time had a lot of focus on you as a your civic duties for the country, for your society, for your community, and I think those stayed with me to a great extent. You know, don't throw your trash on the ground, kind of, and we always had to keep the school clean and neat, and your uniform had to be a certain way. These things I think instill a certain discipline in you, which you carry with you throughout your career and your life.
I think now that atmosphere has evolved into a much more pressured, more suppressed environment, and I would like to know your take on this too. You know, every child is unique in their own way in a school environment, and our brains are wired differently. Sometimes how we take in information, some could be visual learners, some could be good memorizers, some could be more case studies.
Absolutely.
So does the school metrics actually define your capabilities? Or because we see people do better even though sometimes they might not perform as expected. So what's your take on that?
So I agree with you 100%. I think there is this sort of societal vision that if you come first and second in class, and especially if you do well in math and science, you're a smart kid, you're a star, your future is going to be phenomenal. I mean, that is the case to a great extent, but I don't think that that should define you at all. I mean, if I look back at my class of, at Ladies College, most of us who were average or slightly above average, or some who were even quite bad in school, went on to become, phenomenal career women who own private businesses, who have become surgeons. And so I think it's very important that society, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your parents, whether it's your immediate sort of family, doesn't view you simply in terms of grade. And I think a lot has to do with you beginning to enjoy knowledge. That is, for me personally, what changed me. So it really wasn't about getting an A in class. It was, this topic really interests me, and so this is what I will do. And this happened sort of progressively, but also in university, where you think that certain topics are more interesting to you than others, and that becomes your career. So I think it's a very valid point.
Definitely. I think when you find the joy in learning, it gives a spark.
Yeah, but before we move on from education, I just want to say that for 4 years I lived and worked in Afghanistan, and I did a lot of education programs. And I always take with me the enthusiasm that little girls in Afghanistan, because they had, they were not allowed to go to school during the Taliban period, and with what joy they accepted this idea that they can go to school despite the attacks, despite a lot of harassment that they received at the hands of various factions. Their commitment to school was something that they considered a tremendous privilege, and it's something we took for granted very much. Whether you were poor, whether you were rich, you could go to school. And that's something across most countries we take for granted, but it isn't so everywhere. And I think this is something for us to really value as something that changes your life, and to take it a little bit seriously, maybe.
Truly. And And also this, your joy in seeking knowledge. It takes you to the UK and you learn a certain area that you really were passionate about. We can talk about what you studied.
So I went to University of Maryland. I studied journalism, and I always wanted to come back to Sri Lanka and be a journalist like you or your colleagues.
You should join us.
Yes. And but then I went on to, and I remember being always interested in economics and development, which was just sort of becoming an important topic in many of the universities. I progressed then on to studying public policy at Oxford. I was at Cambridge, but I didn't do so well in Cambridge because I was far too interested in moving to Africa. I had to decide whether I was going to quit and go off and work in Africa, in Malawi, and I chose that route and didn't finish at Cambridge. So this was something I always wondered, did I do the right thing? Looking back, I think I did. And I think for young people, really, don't be scared. Just grab the opportunities if there is something that presents itself that excites you and that you want to do.
And sometimes they say opportunities, like some opportunities, they come once in a lifetime.
Once in a lifetime, and that for me was one, because I think if I had given that up and finished at Cambridge, I probably would have gone on to do something quite stable and sort of pretty ordinary. But this way, I took a chance. I moved to a continent that I had never visited, and this changed everything for me.
Definitely, and partnering with the World Bank into experience in Africa must have been tremendous. Let's kind of talk about the milestones in your career. You started working with the World Bank. What kind of challenges did you have to overcome, and what did you achieve throughout?
So, I mean, as with all jobs, there are challenges. I mean, so there are challenges in different sort of, there are challenges in the work that you do, and then there are challenges in your professional career. And I think this is so for any job that you do, or even if you work for yourself. So I've always chosen to work in what we call FCV, and which is fragile and conflict and violence affected contexts, and that can be an entire country or that can be parts of a country. So I've worked in northern Uganda, I worked in Sri Lanka right after the war. We did a huge cash transfer and public works program in the north. I've worked in Afghanistan, as I said, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and right now I work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which I love. It's a fantastic country. And the more you work in these countries, what you realize is that people are the same. There's absolutely no difference wherever you go. The people are absolutely the same, very much, you have the same background. In fact, I used to laugh with my Kenyan friends because they've also grown up eating Mari biscuits and reading Enid Blytons and drinking tea at 4 o'clock, and so we had absolutely the same background. But when you work in fragile and conflict-affected countries, there is a whole dimension which is not there in others, which is the security dimension. So I've worked in contexts where there have been kidnappings. I've had people working on the project who've been shot. I've had attempted rape in some of these countries. Personally, nothing has ever happened to me, but I have had colleagues, government colleagues who have been affected by these things. But these are also what the communities that we are working with deal with on a daily basis. We might experience a kidnapping once in a while, but these communities face this day in and day out. So it's something to keep in mind, that whatever you're going through in terms of your country you're working with, people in that country are going through much worse on a daily basis. And I think there is something in how you, and that's where I think how you handle it and the leadership you provide makes a huge difference in how that situation evolves. Because you can either make it into a completely chaotic situation, or it can be managed with as little impact on everything else as possible. And I think who you are as a person contributes to how that situation evolves. And I think we were talking about this before, is that Sri Lankans, I think, bring sort of our, I mean, I can't generalize, of course, but I think there is a certain humbleness that we bring to the table, whether we are interacting with governments, whether we are interacting with the most rural poor, whether you're interacting with youth, militia, youth groups, that is respectful. And I think governments appreciate this very much. I have been told many times by governments I'm working with, oh, Sri Lankans are different. I had a Sri Lankan teacher. I used to work on Ethiopia, and the Ethiopians used to always talk about their Sri Lankan teachers that they had and how nice they were and how good they were. And I think that Sri Lankans in general across the world have this sort of reputation, and I'm very proud to be Sri Lankan when I'm in these countries, because there is a very good vibe, so to speak, where they see you with respect and it's a much easier relationship, I think, than when you're there are some other nationalities which they may not like, but certainly with Sri Lankans, their first response is very positive, and this helps me in my work a lot. But I also feel that it's a tradition then that I have to upkeep, because this is coming to me as a positive from whoever they have worked with before. I remember this even with the Taliban in Afghanistan, being told that they had worked with a Sri Lankan lady who was, I think, a doctor during the Taliban time. I think she has a book out, and it's a very interesting book as well. But I often thought, if they could respect her, then they can respect me as well if I behave in a way that is respectful. So I think these are all things that make your sort of work, however difficult, it makes it easier. But I think the challenges you have in your professional career within the agency that you work can be quite difficult. And I think for a lot of women, for a lot of South Asian women especially, and I think Sri Lankan women, we're really not used to sort of how to position ourselves, how to sell ourselves, how to create an image about yourselves. Just as much as I said that when you're humble and respectful, that works for you with the governments, the clients that we work with, it may not work within your organization, because within your organization, what may be valued is being a bit more pushy, being a bit more, and it's not being aggressive or anything, but is asking for what you think you're worth, or standing up for what you think is right. And I think that's harder, and that's sometimes not even appreciated. But I think you really have to do what you believe is right, because ultimately you have to live with yourself, not with your boss.
Definitely, and I think understanding how to position yourself with the situation, that's very important. And the right kind of personality traits have to come out to optimize the situation. That's true. And also talking about, the youth, the potential of what we have. You being an individual who has global experience, once you start traveling, you realize we're not so different from each other. We live in this box, kind of separating ourselves from other cultures. Yeah. But with your cross-cultural experience and understanding the big picture, how important do you think it is for our youth to kind of understand others, to maybe go around the world, explore it, and kind of celebrate that, that equity we have and we share?
So, I think youth all over the world is our future, of course, but is also our wealth, because that's who's going to make this world better. And you see this now across the globe, the youth movements and how much good they can do with sustainable development, climate change, etc. But I think in Sri Lanka we have a really there is so much potential in the youth here. Whether they've been educated in a rural school in Vaunia or in a Colombo school or a school in Hambantota, what they bring to the table is amazing, I think, in terms of technology, in terms of science, in terms of innovation. I think acknowledging what youth can bring to the table is only going to add value to our economy and our society. So I think, sometimes there is a tendency to look at youth as, they have a lot to learn and dismissing them. But I think we do this to our detriment, because realizing their potential should be our goal. And one of the things that I would say to kids in Sri Lanka is, as much as possible, travel. Even when you don't have money, travel, because that's what a lot of the European countries do. These kids backpack, they go out to other countries, they experience other cultures, and we don't do that as much. We don't even know this backpacking idea, because as a kid, when I traveled, my mother would make sure I would go and stay with some auntie in England or some uncle in, it's always managed. But experience cultures and don't think of ourselves as superior. Just go and see how similar you are to these people. Youth everywhere, I think, have so much to contribute. So I would say to Sri Lankans, young people, go out and learn from other youth of other countries, learn another language. This is something we are really not forced to do here. But I studied French at Ladies College and then again in college as well, and this has opened a whole new region of the world. So right now I work on West Africa. This I was only able to do because I had French. And oftentimes when we are studying these languages, we don't take it seriously. We think, I'm just going to do it for my O-levels, or I'm going to do it for my A-levels. But really, that is what will open the door for you to other cultures and other areas. When you go to these countries, learn the language a little bit, try to not just be with the Sri Lankans, which is also a tendency that we all have. Get out of your comfort zone, experience a country. Yes, of course, you'll have some bad experiences as well, but in general, it will be very positive. And that's the way you learn about another country. And also, don't just go to the West, there's a much bigger world than Paris and London and New York. Go to Africa, go to Latin America, I used to work on Mongolia, and I never ever imagined the things I saw and experienced in Mongolia that I would ever come across things like. So it's an amazing learning opportunity. So push your boundaries a bit, go outside of your comfort zone, and where the aunties and uncles are not there.
Definitely. That's a big takeaway from that conversation. And we did talk about a lot of things, and a focal point has been the potential Sri Lanka has too, and there's a journey awaiting, in terms of promoting quality education, driving efficient labor markets. There's a big journey ahead for us. And from your professional perspective, we are stepping into a new era, a new government, a new governing system. So from your professional point of view, what could you tell for those who are actually controlling these entities?
I can say as an aside, from my personal experience, not as a World Bank, none of this as a World Bank representative. This is very much a personal interview, as we discussed. When I come to a country, I always talk to the taxi drivers, I always talk to the vegetable sellers, and I speak to sort of as many people as I can, and not the middle and upper classes, but really the people working that you meet on a day-to-day basis. And there's great optimism, I think, that perhaps this time there is going to be a change, and that there is going to be a difference in the lives of people. And I think that one of the messages I would say to a new government is that there are, you were asking me earlier about technical assistance, etc., that there's a great lesson from Rwanda. When President Kagame took was elected president, he actually called the World Bank and the IMF and MIGA, etc. And he asked the Rwandese who were working in these places to take a sabbatical and to come back to Rwanda to help the country, to work in government. And many of those, I have friends who went back, haven't come back. They've continued to work in government for much less pay, etc., but they've continued to do that. But many went for a period of 2 years and worked in the government. And in the same way that there are lots of technical experts, and I can speak for myself, colleagues at the World Bank who have retired, who are dying to work because they are, they don't even need the money because they have a pension, but they are, based all over the world. They're dying to work, and all they need is just a request to come and help the government. And I think this is an opportunity that a lot of new governments don't know. That all of these international organizations have Sri Lankans. Ask them to come and help set up, avenues for government staff to our government officials to go and do sabbaticals with these other organizations. Look at where the opportunities are, and I think this is something that we don't exploit as much as we should. We come on technical missions, but I, for one, would be more than willing to come and work in government. And I think there are lots of people like me who want to give back, because after all, I feel, yes, I studied in America and the UK as well, but Sri Lanka gave me who I am, and I would like to give back.
Definitely.
Yes.
Something definitely nice to hear, and some sort of a silver lining for us as well. So thank you for making that statement. And also, we had a very profound conversation. But I would like to ask you, besides your professional career, what do you do as a passion, as a hobby? What kind of things do you seek out? Is there some little things that make you happy?
So I must say, this is probably not a good thing, but my work is my passion in many ways. If you ask my friends, what do I enjoy doing, they'll say it's talking about work and talking about economics or development, and so this is something, and I read a lot about these kinds of issues. But I think that one thing I would like to say is that when you have a serious career which you're very invested in, there are societal pressures. There are societal pressures for you to conform, you must get married, you must have children. If you don't do that, you're looked down upon. And I think this is from a different era, I think women especially, and men, should really choose what is right for them. And I think that, if you want to be a married couple with no children, or you want to be single, this should be fine. I mean, I think it takes all types to contribute. And I think you don't always need to conform easily to societal pressure. You should do what you want, and especially when you have a career that's demanding. Sometimes it's very hard to balance all of these things, and that's okay. You try, you do what you can. But I think that women especially should not limit themselves to just what society wants them to be or to do. And you just be who you are, you're good enough,
Definitely. And maybe if that pressure was lifted from certain women, maybe we would have more innovators,
absolutely,
more entrepreneurs.
Yes, I mean, I see a lot of my colleagues, I myself didn't want kids, but I see a lot of my colleagues who are mothers who really struggle because they are the primary caregiver, even though they are married. We go on long missions, sometimes to countries where there's no internet, there's no telephone working properly. And you're there for 3-4 weeks with intense schedules. And they often have to leave their kids at home. They're small. They are, and it's a huge tension. But I think that we need to also empower men to take on more of the family responsibility. I think it happens now in sort of the more educated households, perhaps with more money, but this should be something that is accepted throughout society, throughout the countries that we not just in the West, but also in the East and in Africa, South Asia, to say, yes, the man's role is important as a father as well. It's not just the mother that is the caregiver and the whole sort of the primary person that ensures that the household is run well, that it is also the father's responsibility, because the mother is doing a pretty impressive job herself. So I think it has to change from all sides, and most men do want to do that. They just need to be given an opportunity. They need to have the role models who've done that, and I think things will change, but it needs to change rather quickly if we want women to be as productive as we want them to be, I think.
Definitely, and I think the rate at which women also demands that independence has changed. So there is some sort of a silver lining that we can see, because well, we have seen the productivity trends also. The workforce is gradually shrinking, so we need a lot of more women playing a consequential role in the workforce as well. So I guess there is a necessity, even through policy, there might be a necessity in the future that women need to be involved in a career. So we did talk about a lot of interesting things. We spoke about the past, the present, and now let's talk about what's in store for the future, what's in the pipeline.
What's in the pipeline? That's a good question.
Keep doing what you love.
Keep doing what I love, perhaps. Spend a little more time being on holiday, hopefully. But I think at some point I would like to come back to Sri Lanka and work. That's something I absolutely think I need to contribute. But I think I would like to write more as well about some of these experiences, because I think, especially for young women, it opens doors that, reading about someone just like you. I remember in Afghanistan, when I used to go and I was leading the World Bank mission, and they had always sort of expected, these kids and the teachers expected it to be sort of somebody from the West coming, leading the mission. And then I would go and I would be in a salwar kameez or a sari, or, and they were just amazed. They would touch my hair, they would, and I was eating with my fingers. They would sort of, enjoy this. And I think when you see someone just like you or just like your mother doing something that is important in the framework of the World Bank or the UN or government or the private sector, it gives them the opportunity to imagine themselves doing that, because it is someone just like me that's doing this job. So of course I can do it. But if you only see role models from the West, for example, then it seems like there's a bit of a barrier. I can't do that because, all the Sri Lankans I see, or all the South Asians I see, are at sort of lower level jobs. It's only the Western countries that have the big jobs. You have these impressions in your head, but just having a few examples that are different help you. It really frees your mind as a kid, I think.
Definitely.
So I think that is something that I would like to do, to write a bit more than I do now.
Wow, that is definitely inspiring. And we have a lot of people with so much potential, but the society has defined certain barriers, like they have put out certain barriers, like sometimes you need privilege to get up there, sometimes you need the resources, you need money, you need network contacts, and most of the people really is very skeptical about achieving high up there. But oftentimes it's about your passion and how driven you are. So is this a misconception? And if it is so, what is your advice to all those out there who really want to pursue on those high-flying dreams?
I think Sri Lanka is quite unique because I feel that, I have been out for, more than 30 years now. I left Sri Lanka in 1981, and every time I come here and I work on some aspect of Sri Lanka, whether it is, I go to the bank, or I meet with civil servants, or I meet with young people, I am just blown away by how smart people are here. Their answers are never just sort of simplistic and black and white. You speak to a bank, somebody in the banking sector, they will give you a very nuanced answer about a topic that that you wouldn't imagine them to have a grasp on. And in the same way, you to speak to young people, they're so involved in so many different areas, that is, whether it is sustainable clothing or importing goods. I was speaking just the other day to a kid who's here looking at a particular type of fauna in Sri Lanka and writing up about it as part of her PhD thesis. Nobody had even, heard about this particular plant, and she was looking into that. I heard today about a woman who's looking at a particular type of cat in Sri Lanka, a wild cat. And so you find these pretty amazing things that people are doing here. I'm also, I've worked in Sri Lanka right after the war as part of the World Bank team that came here, and I was amazed at how committed and how astute the civil servants were. They were working day and night to get the systems back up in place, to start, the provinces functioning. And I was just amazed at what amazing insights they had. And this was just after the war. We were up there sort of in August after the war ended, and people were back up, and so there's huge potential in this country. I think the one thing that I feel becomes a block, and I think that it is an entitlement. When we grew up in Colombo, English was very accessible to us, to study English, to learn English. And I think this allowed us, this gave us so many privileges, just having that link language and speaking it comfortably. And this is also something that Ladies College gave me and my parents. But you don't realize what a privilege it is and what a resource it is, but also to realize that the people who don't have it, that it is such a barrier for them. And I think Sri Lankan educators have to realize this in a much more sort of concrete way, and to actually take out some of the barriers that stop these young children from learning and speaking English comfortably, because of course their mother tongue is very important. And I've always been very, very grateful that I had my husband was Tamil, and he spoke fluent Tamil. I spoke fluent Sinhalese, and this gave us, I think, a huge sort of uniqueness in a country like America. But I think that for young people, giving them the opportunity to really study English and to become familiar with it. I remember when we were in university, English was called kadua, because it really cut you. And I think that still remains for many rural areas in this country. And it's unfair, and it's a huge barrier, because that means they really cannot connect to the outside world. It means that Google, which we go to all the time to check everything, is not as accessible to them, which is very unfortunate. And I think this is something that we really have to try to sort of address in a very real way, because it absolutely holds them back.
All right, now we're going to change the gears a bit, and I'm going to kind of put you in trouble now, right? So starting off with your taste in fashion, I love what you're wearing, and you're very presentable. But out of curiosity, I remember saying that your shoes are made of tire, and you were hiding it a lot. But let's talk about your philosophy on what you're dressing up as.
Okay, so I have to say that there's a whole frivolous side to me, as my friends will attest. I love fashion. I love I don't know if I can call it rubbish TV, but I love watching just reality TV, etc.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw it in a dream or someone came and whispered into my ear. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was my subconscious, but were you really bummed about the Tristan episode? Keeping up with the Kardashians.
No, this is really unfair. Yes, so I watched the Kardashians. I have to admit.
Who's your favorite character?
I like Kim because I think she's very much together and has a focus that's bigger than just her life and her fashion, and
True.
she's fighting for prison reform, which I admire. I also like the mother. I think she's a pretty amazing woman, but I just watch it because it helps me to just switch off, and I love the Vanderpump Rules. I don't know if that shows in Sri Lanka, but it's also about young people, and it's a very interesting show. But yeah, so that's my guilty pleasure is. And you asked me about my shoes, so I love fashion, I have to say, which is kind of a little bit incongruous considering what I do, but I think it's something that allows you to express who you are, your personality, and also to have a bit of fun in this world. So the slippers, actually I was told not to wear these slippers, but they are made by the Maasai. And I bought it in Tanzania, and indeed the soles of the shoes are made of old tires. They take the rubber from the tires and they treat it in some way, and then they make the slippers, and then it's actual just leather that they hand sew and make it. So I'm very proud to wear these.
So you are into sustainable fashion as well?
I think it's very hard not to be, and I think, again, I hope I'm not making this too serious, but it's, sustainability I think is two dimensions. One is that you wear clothes that are natural fibers, shoes that can actually disintegrate when you're done using it, etc. But it's also not just buying clothes for the sake of buying
True.
clothes and passing them down. My nieces steal all my clothes, so that much I do for the environment. But I think it's really important to think about what you wear. So I love silks, I love good cotton. This is actually a natural indigo dye, and it's from a shop in Delhi called Good Earth, which I love. I shop there a lot because they have very good cotton. But yes, I'm guilty. I love looking at fashion magazines, and a lot of my friends laugh at me about my extracurricular activities because they're not very much in keeping with the rest of my life, I think.
Yes, as much as a lady loves good cotton, she also loves a good rap, because I heard that you're there's an inner gangster in you. I always wondered why you have this amazing perseverance and this leadership skills. I'm like, where does this strength come from? Does it come from Tupac or Lil Wayne?
I love Tupac. I've always loved rap, I have to say, and I think it speaks to me. I also love baila, let me say. Nothing like a good 70s baila. But I like Travis Scott a lot. I like Kanye. I like Eminem. I've always enjoyed rap and hip hop. And Nicki Minaj, who I think is somebody who's pretty phenomenal as an artist. So yes, so that's not. I think people expect me to say, I don't know, Eagles or something, and then I never say that.
Good one. And I think it's beautiful in a way because even rappers, they talk about world issues.
Absolutely.
They talk about something really phenomenal. Sometimes when you really not just hear it but listen to it, you
Yes.
really feel the drive in what they're trying to say, the message that they're giving.
Absolutely. I think rap is the new reggae in a way, because in my generation we listened to reggae, which was very much about social issues and causes. But if you listen to rap, I think it really tells you some of the fundamental problems in our society and what young kids are experiencing, which is why I think, from Sri Lanka to Bangkok to Chile, they're all listening to this stuff because it resonates, and they use the same language. I listen to my nephews talking and I barely understand them, but it's because they're using a lot of this rap language because it resonates, and I think that's pretty phenomenal,
Definitely. And being a Washington girl,
yes,
right? You do love those who come from Washington who really knows how to crack a good joke.
Yes.
We can talk about who you love when it comes to comedy, because I know that you love comedy. I heard that you really love to watch stand-up comedy.
Yes.
So who do you really like to pay attention
to? Of course, my homeboy. Dave Chappelle. He's from Washington. I love his political satire. But Washington is very much political. Even our comedy is politics, right? So I have right around the corner. I live right in DC, in Dupont Circle, and you can walk to the Improv, which is a stand-up comedy club, which is very popular. And so you actually get to hear a lot of young, up-and-coming comedians. So I do that a lot, especially when I have visitors from other countries. I take them there. And yes, so Trevor Noah is another one that the whole country loves. I think. Yes,
absolutely.
I'm sure. And he's not bad looking either.
Oh, he's. And yes. I'm just going to stay silent on that one.
So yeah. And when I travel, I often go to the music bars, and in fact, one of the things they joke about my missions to countries is that we work really hard, but we also party really hard.
Work hard.
So we go to in Congo, we used to go to this jazz bar, which was superb, all local artists, and we used to dance till 1 a.m. and then go to South Africa. You actually go to some of the bars there, and I have colleagues who remember going for shows when Trevor Noah was actually a stand-up comedian in Joburg and in Cape Town. So it's quite amazing that he's come a full circle.
So now we kind of know what she does during her free time. She likes to party a bit, go hit a jazz bar maybe. Also, on a typical day, I know that you wake up, there is a routine that you probably undergo. But are you a food enthusiast? Are you very do you have any special preferences, or do you like to explore when it comes to food types, or because you're a global person? Do you have any sort of experiences with culinary?
Nigerian pepper soup is my favorite thing to eat.
I need to try that. Can you get a recipe?
Yes, I also love Ethiopian food. But I really try whatever food, wherever I go, I try the food there. And the joke always is that even if you're getting malaria, that if you have a properly made Nigerian pepper soup, it kicks the malaria out of you, and I can attest to this. So yes, but I also like a lot of Sri Lankan food. I only eat Sri Lankan food when I'm here. I don't.
What's your favorite?
I refuse to eat anything else. I love a good bhat curry.
Yeah.
And I love pol sambal. We used to call it PSB at ladies, but PSB. And yes, give me a good kadepang, pol sambal, and I'll be absolutely happy. Yeah,
that's definitely the dream.
Yes, I miss that when I'm in Washington because we don't have a Sri Lankan restaurant there. But I hope that very soon we will. So we have to go to New York every time we want to have a good kottu roti or something.
New York has a lot of amazing.
Absolutely, Sigiriya has really good. They even have Sri Lankan beer downstairs. So
wow,
it's pretty amazing. Yes.
That's definitely a way to kick in with your New York holiday.
Exactly.
And now you're currently having a vacation here. So do you have any special a place that captured your heart in Sri Lanka? What have you been up to in terms of travel?
Well, my usual hangout spot for this time of the year is Sun and Sea in Unamatuna. I go there a lot. I stay there. This time we went to Arabella. Arabella, I think it's called Arabella on the Sea or something like this. But it was a fantastic place, and the service was extremely good. I loved staying there. The only thing was that you have to take a tuk-tuk to go to the beach. But
Do you like tuk-tuk
I love
adventures?
tuk-tuks. And actually I like chatting to taxi drivers and to tuk-tuk drivers
You
because
learn
they
way more than the internet.
absolutely, if you want the political pulse, that's who we need to speak to. And when I go to Trinco, I always go to Nilavili Beach because that's some place I've gone to since I was a kid. Love the place, love the service, and I feel like I'm going home. Every time I go to that room number 3 or something like that, it feels like going home. So yes, and when you asked me where I like to go on holiday earlier, and I think Jamaica. That's and I often go when it's winter in Washington. I escape to Jamaica because it's close by. It reminds me of Sri Lanka with little boys and going to school in their little blue shorts, holding bats, and they have food that I really enjoy, jackfruit and stuff, which is fantastic. And the sea is superb. So, and I get to listen to my rap music and my reggae, and yes.
Most of the times when we listen to rap music, we're either doing laundry or like we want to be gangster, but most of the time we're like doing very average things. But that's okay.
That's okay there too, I'm sure.
And if you can pick one place that you haven't been to yet, what would it be?
I've never been to the Amazon. And I think I've worked in Brazil, but I've never been to the Amazon, and I would really like to do that, I think.
Well, I really hope that you'll get that trip done very
Thank
soon.
you, I hope so too.
And with that, we are going to wrap up today's discussion. Once again, thank you so much, Samantha de Silva, for being a part of this. Thank you for taking time from your holiday and sharing this amazing, memorable moment with me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
It's our pleasure.